It's the show where Hawaii's newsmakers come to talk and to take your questions live. From the nation's capital to Honolulu Hale, from the state legislature to the fifth floor. We bring the experts to you and ask them what you want to know. Spotlight Hawaii with Yanji Denise and Ryan Pelesuji on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.
Aloha, happy Wednesday. Thanks so much for being here. I'm Yanji Denise, joined by Ryan Pelesuji. This is Spotlight Hawaii on the digital platforms of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. And Ryan, today we are heading over to Honolulu Hale.
That's right. A guest who we never have a lack of subject or topics to talk about. We want to welcome in now Mayor Rick Blangiardi joining us here on the program. Thanks so much, Mayor, for joining us once again.
Oh, glad to be here, Ryan. Yanji, good morning and Happy New Year.
Well, we always have so many topics to discuss. It's almost like we're going to popcorn around on a variety of issues.
You're not going to give me any opportunity to complain about that picture you guys use. You better pick up the most unflattering pictures. You know.
Yeah, we don't run our own graphics, but we'll tell our graphics department, and we'll work on getting you a better headshot for that. But Mayor, let's start off with the real property tax assessments. There was a lot of surprised individuals and those who got their real property tax assessment. Some seeing increases up to 20 to 30%. Your thoughts on this assessment overall, and your message to those residents out there who are concerned about the numbers that they're seeing in their property value.
Okay, so let me shift gears here because we were just joking around a little bit and just say that it's a very serious situation that caught us completely by surprise. This is the first time that home sales, retail sales, and real estate exceeded $10 billion. It actually is close to $12.5 billion. And so while I think historically people have always appreciated from a home ownership standpoint an improvement or increase in their equity value, this became more than cumbersome, especially for those people on fixed incomes. So that said, I want to be really clear that these are just assessments that went out. What we're doing now in looking at the remedies, and I'm not a tax expert, but I have given direction that we must do something that's material, that's significant, and that we can get there with either tax credits or tax exemptions in this situation. Just let me anticipate the question about lowering the tax rate. I don't believe that will happen. I think Hawaii historically has always been told about we have one of the lowest rates for property tax. I think that is something that if this were to sustain itself could be entertained, but we're looking at this as somewhat as an aberration this past year. And so it is very serious. And I'm just asking for a little bit of patience here from everybody. Again, these are not tax bills. And we're going to see what we can get done.
And on that topic of seeing what you can get done, what do you think would be a more reasonable threshold for an exemption? Let's say, should we go to $2 million? Where do you think that those, I know you said you're not a tax expert per se, but just sort of broad strokes, what do you think is a reasonable way to navigate this?
Yeah, well, I'm actually waiting to be briefed on that because we've said, obviously that would manifest itself in a tremendous increase of revenue for the city. And what I've said to them is, how do we want to peel that back from the standpoint of not taking that money, and knowing that there was some of that budget for the increase, how that really breaks down to that particular question, I don't know yet, but I promise you we'll be really forthright. I just don't want to speak for the people that are working on this and misrepresent it to the public. I think right now, what we're trying to do more than ever is manage expectations here and not have people, freak out over these assessments, because I'm going to say it again, it caught everyone here by surprise. And so that's unprecedented. Usually these things are calculated pretty good. And that's, as I've been told historically, this just is a real aberration. So
I want to switch gears because, again, we have a lot of topics we want to get through. So we're going to get through as much as we can. Want to move on to Red Hill really quickly. We know that there continues to be concern about the management and what's happening there with cleanups. As well as overall transparency with this latest bill, with videos not being released. If you can just speak to how much you're in communication with those who are responsible for this cleanup efforts and just the overall efforts that are being done to hold the Navy accountable for what they say and the timeline they presented.
Well, look, Ernie Lau has done a really good job representing not only the Board of Water Supply, but I feel in many ways representing our community and, and being that champion, if you will, on this subject. But I've also had meetings. In fact, I'm meeting today with Admiral Aguilino after this event here. And I've met 2 weeks ago with Admiral Paparo, and his staff out of Compact Fleet. And look, I will tell you that they're the first to admit where mistakes have been made. I've had no sense of a cover-up at all from the Navy. There's been a lot of exposure in this, a lot of embarrassing exposure, a lot of stuff that, quite honestly, a lot of people didn't believe what happened. I mean, the whole idea of draining the tanks at Red Hill is something that, before the incident, nobody would have thought was going to happen, and now they're about the business of doing that. So last week, I talked with both the Island Energy folks and with PAR, both of whom I think are going to be involved in the draining of the tanks. I'm going to get an update today from Admiral Aguilino. What I feel and see, Ryan, is a real sincere commitment right now to get this cleaned up, to do this the right way. It's not an overnight thing that everybody wants done. Safety is a big issue. It is unprecedented. We're talking about millions of gallons of jet fuel, as you know. I would tell you, we're dealing with the people at the highest levels of our government, from the standpoint of the military, and they're very accomplished people, and we've had very candid conversations, and I don't sense any arrogance. I sense a real sincerity about doing what's right for our island home. I do, and I'm not naive, believe me.
I want to ask you about the landfill. You are tackling one issue after another, and this is a pretty big one. We understand that there's a big meeting today to try to figure out what can be done on the timeline. What do you think is the best way forward on the landfill issue, and what do you see as a solution to this? Because it seems pretty hard to navigate.
Yeah, in big, I guess, equates to serious too. So not just like the assessments, it's a very serious situation. We know it's at stake. We understand the sentiment on the leeward coast. We did everything we could from putting together a land action commission of appointed folks to evaluate what amounted to was 6 sites. And their recommendation after all that study and analysis was they recommended none of them. Oahu's a different island in that all of our water is underground, so it's all in the aquifers. The prior administration went 0 for 10 or 11 or 12 in addressing this issue. We went 0 for 6. If you look at the no-pass, because everything in the aquifer is, pretty much most of Oahu, the only places you could go would be either in state-owned agricultural land or possibly military. And so what we've done is we've asked for an extension for 2 years, not extending the lease. This got reported incorrectly at Waimanalo Gulch. We still have time at Waimanalo Gulch, but we've asked for an extension to further study this, because the challenge here, to be very candid, is that people on the technology side say you can construct a landfill today that would not leach, that would not leak. You could do that with technology, but the sensitivity, given the Red Hill incident primarily over our drinking water and what that represents, is at an all-time high, understandably. So nobody is going to do anything that looks like it could in any way, shape, or form, because no matter what you did, somebody would say that's going to be dangerous. And so we're looking to avoid that. This is, it was a confluence of events, with respect to Red Hill and the landfill, which has been kind of put off for a while, but we're taking it on because the clock is ticking. And so we need to examine it more. We need to see if there's any way to negotiate. What we need is about 500 acres. Okay. The landfill itself is about 90 acres, but with the buffer zone requirements and everything else that have gone in, it's about a 500-acre parcel. That's not easily come by. And so at the same time, technology is, we do at H-Power, the way the dumps are today, if you go out there to Waimanalo Gulch and you'll see with the ash, and it doesn't have the smells and whatever. I mean, it's such a complicated, evolving thing. And the last thing we want to do, though, given the sensitivity to those people living on the leeward side of the island, is to just say, well, there are no alternatives and we're just going to continue at Waimanalo Gulch. I feel too strongly about what that represents to people without us exhausting all of our energies. And we've tried to do that in just our 2 short years in office, doing everything right. But I think our appeal to the Planning Commission is a reasonable one. I think they understand it. And we're going to go from there. And that's the best I can tell you. It's not an easy solution.
Yeah, and given if that is accepted and you are given more time, you're still going to have to navigate. This is a highly emotional issue. Many people don't want this in their neighborhood. They're going to have arguments from that side. How, in that process as mayor, how are you going to navigate just those emotional concerns that you're going to hear from constituents? Because I imagine, one, finding the amount of land, as you mentioned, that you need, combined with the pushback that you're likely to get in all these various communities. How do you navigate that path?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we're going to just have to be as transparent and upfront. And I think, again, it's in the spirit of exhausting our energies and possibilities. And so, again, we did the diligent exercise this time around. We went 0 for 6 in recommendations. I think we're going to talk with the state. We're certainly going to talk with the military to see what could be feasible there. Look, at the end of the day, I think, as you just said, there's a lot of emotion with it, and there's going to be, I guess, a form of NIMBYism, not in my backyard, no matter what you do. And maybe there's a way we could do this where it's not in anyone's backyard. It just depends. And I want that opportunity to look. And again, we've all become acutely aware of our drinking water and the fact that the aquifers are what they are. And, nobody wants to put anything over them. So here we are at the same time talking about where we're going to put a landfill, about draining the tanks at Red Hill and so on, all at the same time. So at some point, we've got to figure it out. The good news is in the short term, or at least for the next however many years, we still have capacity at Waimanalo, and we're under contract there as well. But we're only asking for 2 more years to do an exhaustive study.
Let's talk about an area that has seen a lot of progress, and that is Chinatown. We know that your administration has really made that a focus when it comes to addressing homelessness and addressing crime. Tell us about some of the gains in Chinatown that you're seeing, and what is the next step there? Yeah,
thank you. Well, just really one more point though to the last thing. We're going to be really open with the community. I want to offer that on this show. I just want you to know that we're going to. I don't think we can over communicate. And I think this is a good segue then even back to Chinatown. I'm very proud of what we've been able to do. And just even recently, last week, we did a press conference and we announced that we're going to use SLRF money, state and local relief funds from the government, another $647,000 to augment the existing police coverage that's down there. We also, I'm not at liberty to talk about the particulars right now, but the city is now back in the private activity bonds, and we allocated funds last week to the tune of $115 million for a major project in Chinatown that'll be getting announced pretty soon. We've had a lot of success at starting to clean up the streets, getting the community involved. We've bought security cameras. We had 26 security cameras on there. Only 1 works right now. We actually bought those last year. We bought 52. The first 6 arrived. Not unlike anything else, we've had supply side problems. We don't think the cameras necessarily are a deterrent to crime when people commit crimes, but what it really does is helps with the enforcement of that. We've also created a working dynamic between Chief Logan and our police department and the prosecutor's office, and quite honestly, even with the judiciary, and trying to evolve out of a blame game and everybody pointing fingers as to why things are the way they are. I thought we really divided up the homeless community against the criminal community and who was lurking in that homeless community. And we try to dissect it in every way we can, all the while cleaning up the streets, all the while we're going to be investing heavily in some capital projects for Kekalike Mall, and doing anything and everything we can with some of the developers down there to activate it, to move housing. In addition to that, in discussions with the Taiwanese government on the cultural plaza, in fact, we submitted that whole program to this thing called the Mayor's Institute on City Design. We're one of 4 cities. They flew me back to Chicago. I'm meeting the architects Friday night, just before they're flying in here on what we can get done with the Riverwalk, because we want to develop an alternative site, so that the block parties are not so invasive. So we really think the Riverwalk it's incredible. It was built in 1900. You couldn't build it today. And it has 50-foot wide sidewalks on both sides. And I can tell you the Taiwanese government is very interested in helping us with the retail element on what's going on at the Cultural Plaza. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but we've had very candid conversations. We all recognize it's a great opportunity down there. There's and we've had good cooperation on what we want to get done. With American Savings Bank on Olive Park and their ongoing investment in there. And there was a couple other things that come to mind, but we're trying to do anything and everything we can to make that, the kind of place that people are going to really feel good about living there, working there, owning businesses there. I mean, I'm very proud of what we got done at Sun Yat-sen Park. I think we're still working on that. It's not quite complete, but I know that you're familiar with that. If you drive down there right now, I was just there the other night, adjacent to the Hawaii Theater. It looks totally different. So, I think one of the best things I can say in summary is a year ago, we did a cleanup. We had about 180 people show up for Chinatown. Then this past year, when we did it, we had over 400. So we're looking at doing everything. We're looking at Smith Beretania Park and what we can do, and maybe the creation of some pickleball courts down there. And the list goes on, but it's a full on, focus and concern, knowing full well too, that, we're building the rail, and not too many years from now, there'll be an incredible rail station there, which is going to also facilitate and help with that whole thing. So that's where we are. And I hope that answers your question. I could talk about a lot. We're doing a lot down there. It's exciting.
Well, you mentioned rail, so let's go right there, your favorite subject. Talk a little bit about the rail and where we're at. There is some eager anticipation that we could see people riding the rail in this first quarter, at least going to Aloha Stadium. What can you tell us about that progress and where things are at?
Well, I'm not going to get off of it until somebody tells me differently, but I expect us to be operating the rail by the end of this first quarter. So now here we are, almost very quickly getting into the middle of January. So the clock is ticking, but as far as I know, all signs go towards that. We've certainly been doing all the trial runs. I've talked with Roger Morton. We're prepared to start to do that, to operate. It could be multimodal out of Aloha Stadium. But yeah, we hope to be able to start running it from East Kapolei to Aloha Stadium by the end of this first quarter. I think everything is under control for the most part. And then, we continue with the construction of it. And we feel really good about that. We're now swinging around, coming down the Dillingham corridor. And that's going to be the most challenging in construction. But I feel good about that. I know the monies we have in contingencies, all of our monies have been vetted now. The FTA is back at the table. They're going to be, if they haven't already, I know they haven't done that yet, but we're about to receive $125 million. They're back at that on the $744 million that they were withholding. Senator Schatz and our congressional delegations just got a $64 million that is going to be applied towards the rail on the inflationary. It's one of the things that anybody and everybody who's involved in the construction of anything right now. So that was good. That was something that wasn't even into our numbers, that when we had to come up with our new recovery plan, and we kept trying to model and project where inflation was going in today's world, with supplies being what they are. That was challenging. And then to get that was an added plus. So I am feeling really good about all things rail compared to where we were 2 years ago today. We just hit the second year mark to where we are today. I feel very, very good. And I think as it comes into the downtown corridor, it's going to start to feel very real for a lot of people. And I think you're going to start to see some TOD, some transit-oriented development and housing too elsewhere. So this is the future's coming at us. This is a transformative project. This is a project that goes well beyond my lifetime. And I don't want to be so presumptuous to say for your kids, maybe your grandkids, but when it all gets said and done, I want to say it again. This is phase one, which we got the FTA to agree to. And that's what we put a ribbon around it for $9.8 billion to take it from East Kapolei to Civic Center, which is 1.25 miles short of Ala Moana Center. But we're not giving up on Ala Moana. And for that matter, if I have any say in it, and hopefully I will, and our planning for phase two, is that we're going to go much deeper into Kapolei, because where it starts and stops right now is not an ideal location at all. Not the least of which is Kamakanali'i, the shopping center, which is huge out there, is really close by, but it needs to go further into the housing areas. So it's a very exciting thing. And I'm the fourth mayor to touch it. There'll be other mayors after me. But I think we're in a good place with that project compared to where we've been in a number of years. And I feel very excited about its future.
You know, you mentioned TOD, and I want to talk a little bit about housing, especially in the context of homelessness. We had Connie Mitchell from IHS on here on Monday, and she said while there have been tremendous gains with helping families, and especially those with young children, and helping those folks get into more permanent situations, the numbers are pretty much static when it comes to the number of people who are homeless. And that they really, she said, need more shelter space, that they lost a lot of shelter space during COVID, and that they need more housing. I know that this is something that the state is, of course, trying to tackle, but from the city's standpoint, you know, how do you feel like things are going when it comes to the homeless situation?
Okay, well, homeless and housing integrated. In fact, we want to change the name of our department to the Department of Housing and Homelessness, to the Office of Housing and Homelessness, right? Because they are closely linked. On the housing side, we're doing everything and anything. I don't think we have enough time in today's show to talk about the focus we're giving in the creation of affordable housing, what that means. And if we have, I would be happy to talk about that. But let's go back to the homeless situation. And that, you know, I really am hopeful that together with Governor Green, that the state and city can work collectively on coming up with places and spaces with beds where we can put people, not just in shelters, but on more permanent kinds of housing for our homeless population. You know, we're doing a lot now, and I think I can tell you the whole new project alone, you know, we I think housed over 400 and some odd people out of that in just the last year. And we're going to continue with that project. I think we treated 700 and some odd people. So our batting average was pretty good at getting people in there as a transitional place and then getting them elsewhere. But as people go out of homelessness, other people come in. So, you know, the governor's talked a lot about what he believes in these villages, and he's got James Koshiba over there and Nani Madeira. So we've already taken a couple of meetings with them. We have a high degree of confidence in being able to work together to create places and to construct. So look, I've said this all along, as challenging as the homeless situation is, you know, it's a scalable problem in gross numbers, even if the number right now is static. And I love Connie Mitchell. She's a saint in my eyes. She just does incredible work. But, you know, we've had an influx of homeless people too coming in as a result of the bad weather on the mainland and post-COVID and the ability to buy a plane ticket. Not that anybody's shipping them in here, but she'll be the first to tell you, if she didn't already, that we've seen an influx of homelessness. So we're trying to work on all of that. And I really do think that, you know, I came into office saying I didn't believe in the sweep strategy as a strategy because it didn't deal with the systemic issues of homelessness. You need to put people places. We've opened up a clinic on Paua'i Street that only has 8 beds, but in conjunction with our program with the John A. Burns School of Medicine with Jabson, we're going to be able to provide medical and help, clinical help, psychiatric help that we couldn't do before, to help also transition and place people. It's a very complicated situation. There's no one answer. But when you consider that almost half of our homeless population has been out in the streets for 10 years or more, and a very high percentage deal with some form of addiction, either drug or alcohol, or worse yet, mental illness, and are not capable of making rational decisions for themselves when opportunities to help them present themselves, this is not an easy fix. So we need places to put people that we can give them the kind of care. And I think that, you know, I've been very open about the state hospital being one that we might be able to convert, but there are other things we need to do. So we're not ducking that. I would tell you right now, for me, and you'll hear me talk about it, and we'll start to lay it all out. I just finished a 1-hour meeting on our affordable housing working group and the people we've put together and what we have underway. And, you know, we'll be putting out a quote unquote published strategy, but this is always about driving execution. Nobody needs another game plan that sits on the shelf. And we are underway right now with an unprecedented number of efforts here. Because it took us a while to define what's the city's best role in this. So private activity bonds were one. We're about to give out another $40 million out of the Affordable Housing Fund. We gave out 28 last year. That's going to be 68 million and less. Our first grant last week was 135 million. We're going to give out another over $200 million over the course of the next several years with developers. We get 120 each year in that. I mean, that's unprecedented. I met with HUD the other day from Washington and San Francisco in the governor's office. I think we have opportunities to work with the federal government in ways we have not been before. Just a lot of things that have to happen. And I could go on about that. I'm just telling you, in this business, you can't get it done fast enough, and for me, I wish we could just make this stuff happen today, but this is how you go about it. So anyway.
We only have a few minutes left, but we know that COVID, of course, has impacted the homelessness, but COVID has also impacted many businesses around Oahu. And you announced an effort that would support some of these local businesses who may have suffered because of COVID-19. Can you share a little more briefly? We're almost out of time here, but a little more about this grant program that will help small businesses. I
keep telling you guys, you don't give me enough time on this show, but that's okay. All right. I don't know how much more I could hint, but anyway. Look, I think a couple of things I'm really proud of in this first 2 years. And if I could just say this, if you think back about where we were 2 years ago today, which was in our second week of office, first year, there were so many things to navigate. First of all of us who were new to government, you had that issue, but also because of COVID, trying to navigate through that and what that meant, and not the least of which was a couple of years ago, there was no talk of vaccines being readily available. And we knew a lot of businesses were closing. We've been shut down since March and so on, and people were staying home. To where we are today, I feel a lot better about that. And along the way, one of the things that we did really well was the rent utility relief program, and we distributed monies and mitigated a lot of evictions and so on. Well, this is yet again another layer of a grant that we just announced this week of a little bit more than $10 million using state and local federal relief funds that is going to be applicable to small businesses that are earning between $75,000 and $5 million a year. And what they have to be able to do to qualify is be able to demonstrate a loss in income of 25% in the years 20 and 21 compared to 2019. We're going to be accepting applications. As applications will be effective on January 30th. We think we can help out in looking at the math and how it's likely to get divided some 400 small businesses. It's not the be all end all per se, but this is a direct shot in the arm of financial recovery for so many of these smaller businesses, some of whom operate out of their homes and whatever. And the various people, I know we had the wedding industry in here the other day, really came in to speak on behalf of this. They're very pleased with it. And so this is just one more offering of using federal monies to help economic impact that so many people here felt. So we're doing anything and everything we possibly can. And I wish sometimes in a setting like this, I could just give you these black and white answers on something complicated like how housing or homelessness or the landfill or or tax assessments. These are big topics, but I can tell you, and I say this on behalf of our team, people are focused on this. People understand the gravitas of this, how important it is to this community, and nobody's looking to sweep anything under the rug. Not with our team. Everybody's looking at all this stuff right in the face and seeing what we can get done. And I'm telling you, you can hold us accountable. We're going to make a difference in this.
In the last 2 minutes that we have, I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about a way that a nonprofit will be honoring first responders through COVID. I know this is something that you've been very supportive of. So let's talk about that in just about the minute that we have left.
Well, it's the Honolulu Community Foundation. Every year they have a gala, and this year, and the tickets have just gone on sale. So the event is going to be held. Here we are midway through January, so I guess it's okay to talk about May 12th. It's going to be at the Sheraton Waikiki, but it is going to be to honor all the first responders. And, this event is always well attended. I've gone to it a number of times in the years past, but we think especially this year, on behalf of the Honolulu Police Community Foundation, that I just want to alert people to the fact that the tickets are on sale. There's a website. It's the Honolulu Police Community Foundation.org. Honolulu Police Community Foundation, all one word, .org, if you want to know more about it. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I think as we go forward, just so you know, what we've told ourselves is we want to build trust with this community by communicating and by action and deed. And we're also looking to create hope in our community. An opportunity right now to help recognize our first responders and the incredible work that they've done and continue to do and will do is a really nice moment in time. So hopefully we'll have a packed house that night. And thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Ending right on time. Talk about a man who knows how to work in media. Thank you so much, Mayor, for joining us once again this morning and really covering a wide variety of topics. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, big topic. So come back next time with smaller ones, but thank you very much for the opportunity. Thank you.
Great to see you. Aloha. Well, Ryan, as you said, a really, really packed conversation. We started the discussion with those tax assessments. A lot of homeowners getting a little bit of sticker shock, if you will. The mayor reminding everyone that that is not a tax bill just yet, but really a valuation of what the properties are worth. And those could be sort of inflated, if you will, or offset by all of those really big sales that went through in the last few years with the pandemic and people looking to either upgrade their homes or perhaps some people moving here out of state and just a lot of trading that went on, especially when the interest rates were a lot lower. The mayor said that they are trying to figure out a way to make sure that people are not met with exorbitant tax bills when it does come time to pay their property taxes. But he did hold pretty firm that the tax rate will likely not be adjusted. That's something the city council can do. He's saying that Honolulu has historically and comparatively low rates, and so they're looking at other mechanisms to kind of keep these costs in line.
Yeah, and we also got an update on Red Hill saying that conversations continue to move forward, that he recognizes that there is that mistrust that is still there. But so far, the conversations that he's had with Navy officials have been positive. In fact, he's heading into one, he said, after this conversation that we had with him to get more updates. And ultimately how the events of Red Hill has also impacted what's happening with the landfill and the search there. The city will continue to wait to see if they are given that 2-year extension, but saying that they recognize that this is going to be an issue that will impact many communities, and the mayor will have to find a way to navigate those emotional concerns of those residents in areas who simply do not want a landfill in their backyard, and finding that common ground and way to move forward on this issue, which in some ways has been looming in the shadows, but ultimately has also been impacted by the events of Red Hill and the overall transparency and all the efforts there from the public in which they view this as sort of a not in my backyard type of issue.
Yeah, and interesting to hear that he has perhaps some hope that they could find a solution, perhaps using some federal land instead, saying that we need 500 acres for this project. Very, very difficult to find a land lot of that size anywhere in Honolulu, in the city and county of Honolulu. So perhaps using some of the military resources instead. That's something that he is discussing. He talked a lot about Chinatown. Of course, we know that Chinese New Year's is coming up, and so there will be a lot of celebrations in that neighborhood to celebrate the Year of the Rabbit. He's saying that he is working on a variety of levels to try to establish partnerships with the Taiwanese government. That's something that he talked about quite a bit, perhaps revitalizing the Riverwalk there, and really trying to find ways to help eradicate crime and a lot of the issues that we saw over the last few years in that neighborhood. He's touting a lot of successes there and also saying there's still some ways to go. And also talking about homelessness, which we spoke about extensively with Connie Mitchell on Monday. You can go back and watch that program if you missed it. They're trying to figure out a way to address this really as a root cause. And Ryan, that always comes down to affordable housing.
Yeah, and an issue, of course, and a topic you can tell he's very passionate about, but unfortunately just not enough time in this program to discuss that. We also heard some optimism about the rail, saying that we could see riders on the rail at the end of this first quarter, saying that so far things are shaping to look that way. And I know that this is something that many people are looking forward to seeing, is actual riders on that rail line. So we'll continue to wait and see. Always, again, we could have talked about 14 other topics, but just not enough time. We're going to have to try to get an hour at some point and extend the show to an hour for the mayor, because there's simply not enough time to get through everything.
Yeah, always wonderful to have him on. On Friday, we are going to be switching gears and speaking with the Native Hawaiian Affairs Program Officer at UH Manoa, Punihelipe. It's very interesting. UH is going to be holding an inaugural commemoration in honor of the overthrow's 130th anniversary. That's coming up on Tuesday. So on Friday, we're going to be talking about the racial healing that the university is trying to foster. They're one of the first universities in the country to address it in this way. So we'll be speaking with that with Ms. Lipe on Friday. We hope you do join us right back here on Friday for another edition of Spotlight Hawaii. Until then, take care and aloha.
We'll see you then. Aloha.
This episode of Spotlight Hawaii is brought to you by Long's Drugs.